brides are planning their wedding on Pinterest. So Pinterest released some of their own stats, and they said that there are 378 million wedding related searches happening on the Pinterest platform every year. Okay, so if you own a wedding business, you should be there. You should be visible on Pinterest.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. Middle of the week. We've made it halfway through, right? I know every week I'm always like, what day is it exactly? But, luckily when I do these, I kind of have to think about exactly what day. Otherwise, it just starts to run together. Hey, Eliza. Today we're going to have Becca come on. And Becca's from the UK, so it's 9 o'clock her time, which is awesome. But definitely a little bit later than what she's probably used to. And we're going to add her in. We're just going to be talking about Pinterest, which is definitely something that I confess that I'm not the greatest Pinterest pinner. So here's Becca. Hey, how are you doing?
Good evening. Good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I was just saying how I'm not the best Pinterest pinner. I just I don't know why. I think it's one of those things like maybe once upon a time I could have, but I don't know if I don't know. I think it makes sense for me sometimes, but then sometimes I'm like, I have no idea when it comes to
We need
Pinterest. And I think a lot of people
that. We need to change
feel
that
that.
this evening. We need to get you pinning and being excited about Pinterest, because I'm excited about Pinterest and you 100% should be on Pinterest as well, because your stuff would do really well on Pinterest.
I love it. I love it. So why don't you tell people who you are if you're not familiar with Becca? So Becca, like I said, Becca's in the UK and she has an amazing wedding group called Engage Weddings. Is that correct? Did I say the name right?
Yeah, so I'm based in the UK. I'm just north of London. You're obviously, if you're not from the UK, you know where London is. We're just north of there in Bedfordshire. I'm a wedding business marketing expert, speaker, consultant, and I have my own wedding blog, Engage Weddings, like Megan said. And as part of that, I have a really cool supplier network, most of whom are based here in the UK, but we do have people from outside the UK as well. But amongst all of those things, the thing that I love to talk about, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, is Pinterest, because not enough people in the wedding industry are on Pinterest, and you should be. So if you are watching this and you don't use Pinterest, and Megan, I'm talking to you as well, by the end of this, you need to be on Pinterest. And if I don't get you excited about being on Pinterest, I have not done my job tonight.
I love it. So I guess first, I mean, I think it makes sense. Like a lot of people are like, oh, wedding dresses, wedding inspiration. It makes total sense. But I think what I've found, and I've heard from other wedding professionals, is that when it comes to actually pinning things, like, okay, fine, so they pin some things, but then they're like, all right, well, how am I supposed to be repinning things? Can I pin other people's pictures? How does that drive traffic to my site? Like, how does that all work? So what, in terms of like kind of the etiquette rules of Pinterest, what would you say that some of those like common misconceptions are that people should really understand before they jump on?
Okay, so the first thing to note is that you should definitely be on there, because brides are planning their wedding on Pinterest. So Pinterest released some of their own stats, and they said that there are 378 million wedding related searches happening on the Pinterest platform every year. Okay, so if you own a wedding business, you should be there. You should be visible on Pinterest. So coming to your question then, so what should we be doing on Pinterest as wedding vendors? Should we be sharing other people's stuff? Should we only be sharing our stuff? Now, the mistake people make is often people go one way or they go the other way. So if you only go on there and you only pin your own pictures, you only share your own content, Pinterest will see you as kind of a spammy user. They'll think you're just here to sell yourself, and your stuff just won't do that well. On the other hand, I see vendors who get really excited. They get on Pinterest, they get excited about everyone else's stuff. And so they maybe make wedding cakes, but they go on there and they see this incredible dresses and these incredible flowers, and they start repinning everyone else's stuff. Now, their account might do well, but all they're doing is marketing other people. They're not marketing themselves. So we don't want to fall into either of those camps. We don't want to just be pinning our own stuff. We don't want to just be pinning other people's stuff. But we need to be doing both of those things. So people ask me for numbers all the time. I don't like to give exact numbers, but somewhere in the region of 60 to 70% of your own pins that you're creating, which link back to you, link back to your website, link back to your Instagram, and then maybe 30 to 40% where you're inspiring people with other people's work. But do not share other people's work that's your direct competition. So if you're a cake maker, that I'm not saying go on Pinterest and share other people's wedding cakes. Okay, if you're a cake maker, share your own wedding cakes and then share other people's stationery, flowers, other things. If you're a photographer, this is difficult because it's hard for you to share other people's stuff when you're a photographer. Okay, so if you're a photographer watching this, share as much of your own content as you want. But when you're looking for other stuff to share, you are going to have to share other photographers' images, but share like detail shots. Share the details of the cake and the flowers, because people are looking at those to look at the cake and the flowers, not to look at the images. Don't share other people's bridal portraits or stunning like couple pictures and that kind of thing. So we'll be doing both.
I love that, because that's exactly it. It's like, if you're a photographer, sharing other people's photos but otherwise it's all your own. So they're really like, it's really important. And I love your tip of making sure that it's, it's kind of like standard, straightforward shots of things that you're sharing, instead of like really artistic, like your composition, your presets, your like whatever that is, making sure that the things of other people are pretty straightforward. Like it's not as like, wow, amazing. So that's good for sure.
And also, there's a ton of other stuff you can be sharing of other people's as well. Like you can share people's blog posts, you can share people's infographics. There's a ton of infographics out there, which are like wedding budgets or like, things to plan for your wedding day, timelines for your wedding day. So if you really have a problem sharing other people's photos, then share other people's graphics and blog posts.
That's a really good point, because there's tons of infographics and they do really well on Pinterest. So that's a really good one. And I know in terms of like keywords, like when people are searching, what are the most important things to kind of be aware of when you're adding keywords into, like, do you hashtag your descriptions, or how do you do that? Like, what's the best way to go about it?
Okay, so keywords are so important on Pinterest. And if you're watching this, you may have been in this situation where you link Pinterest and you kind of lump it together as a social media platform. So people talk about Pinterest, they say, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. But I want you tonight to take that thought out of your head, because Pinterest isn't like a social media platform. It's much more like a search engine. So switch that thinking and realize, like, think of Pinterest in the same way you think of Google search or Google image search, because it's much more like that. So when you're thinking about keywords on Pinterest, you need to think about it in the same way you're thinking about your website. When you're trying to get your website up high onto Google. Now on Pinterest, there's a bunch of places where they look for keywords. I'm going to very quickly run through them now. So if you've got a piece of paper, jot them down. So the places that Pinterest is reading your keywords: the name of your business, the bio on your profile, the name of your boards, the descriptions of your boards, the name of your pins, the descriptions of your pins. They can also read the words on a graphic. So if you've created a graphic on Canva, something like that, they can read the words you've put on it. And also they can read the words on the website that you're linking to. So if you've like got a blog post and it links to your website, Pinterest will also read the keywords on the blog post to make sure you're sending people to somewhere relevant, to make sure you're not saying like 5 amazing wedding ideas, and when they click on it, they go to like a casino website. They will make sure we're sending people to the right direction. So you need to pay attention to where those keywords are. And when you're writing your keywords, you need to put them in all of those places. The other thing that's really important with keywords is to think like your customer, okay? So don't think like a vendor when you're writing your keywords. So I've seen a wedding dress designer, and she took me to her Pinterest and she showed me her pins, and she's like, they're not doing very well. And they were beautiful pictures of dresses, but she called them, the description she called them was like the designer's name and the like code name for the wedding dress. But a bride, like a bride doesn't know those things. So right. If it's me and I'm planning my wedding, I'm going to go to Pinterest and look for like white dress, off the shoulder, slightly lacy, low. And so I told her, change all your pin descriptions, change them to those things, and you will see those things soar. You've got to appeal to your customer. So don't think like a vendor, think like your customer, and make sure you're using keywords in all of the places that I mentioned. As for hashtags, because you mentioned hashtags,
right.
Hashtags work on Pinterest, you can use them if you want to. Personally, I don't really use hashtags on Pinterest. I feel like it's a bit like using hashtags on Facebook, where they work, but no one really does it. Like, I don't know any bride that goes to Pinterest and searches a hashtag. Like, we use hashtags on Instagram, but I don't think people really use them on Pinterest. So you can use them, you can try them, see if they work for you, but focus just on the words in your description and make sure they're relevant to the customer and what the customer's looking for.
Well, I think that what you said was really important, because I don't think people understand that. So like on Instagram, you have to use the hashtags for them to come up in a search, because you're searching the hashtags, versus on Pinterest, you don't have to. And that's a really important distinction. So it's like on Google, you don't have to type in you don't have to type in like the number sign, the hashtag symbol to search on Google. Same thing on Pinterest, but on Instagram, you would have to.
Absolutely.
And I have to add Kaylee, because Kaylee came through before and we were talking. So, hey, Kaylee. But I think those are things that I think a lot of people just they're not sure, because a lot of that information, a lot of people weren't exactly sure how that all worked, and just kind of thought Pinterest was like a social media, but it's not social media. It's a search tool, which I think is, again, a really good, important distinction for people to know. If you want to, again, be found, you have to really, you got to be there, just like on Google. Like, you need a website, you know. So in terms of like converting all of those eyeballs into customers, what's the most important kind of strategy? Because you can put up pretty pictures and have it linked to your website, or be repinning other people's stuff, but how do you get the eyeballs to go into more than just, again, that's great, maybe I'll click, maybe not?
Okay, so there are two stats we need to pay attention to on your Pinterest account. The first stat is those eyeballs. So the monthly unique viewers, how many people are actually seeing your pins on Pinterest? And that stat is quite easy to get up. You can get that up to 100,000 people if you want to. The second stat, which is more important, is how many people are clicking from Pinterest to your website. And that takes a bit longer to achieve, but it's very possible. And I know lots of vendors who now implemented this Pinterest strategy, use it regularly, and Pinterest is their biggest source of traffic to their website, bigger than Instagram, bigger than Facebook. So if you want to get clicks to your website from Pinterest, you need to give people a reason to click. So the things that do best for clicks are blog posts and products. So if you sell products on Etsy, you can create rich pins. We don't have time to go into massively about rich pins now, but they're kind of super pins on Pinterest. And if you pin your products that you're selling on Etsy, it pins the information of like how much they cost, etc. And so people go to Pinterest to make buying decisions. And if you've got those products, they're likely to click through to your Etsy store and then hopefully purchase. Blog posts, again, the reason blog posts are so powerful, number one, they're rich pins, so Pinterest pushes them further up. But number two, because people have to click to get the answer to their question. So if you've written a blog post around, top 2021 wedding cake trends, you will create a graphic on Canva or a similar program called like top 5 2021 wedding cake trends. But in order to find out what those 5 trends are, they have to on the picture and then come to the website. And obviously once they're on the website, then it's your job to keep them on the website. You need to be having calls to action through that blog post. You need to be directing them. If you want to buy one of these cakes, this is where you contact me. Or if you want to see more of my portfolio, this is where you go. Or if you want to read about the other 2021 trends, this is somewhere for you to click. So once people are on your website, then it's your job to sell to them and move them around. But it's quite easy to get people over to your website if you're consistent with your strategy. If you are just posting pictures, then again, just think about what you can write in the description to just entice people to click, to see more like this, to see more of this inspiration, to see more bouquets, then click on the picture and tell people to do it. Because if you're telling people to do it, they're more likely to do it.
Love it. That's good. And so what do you think when it comes to Pinterest, obviously besides the hashtag, using hashtags versus just keywords and descriptions, what are some of the common mistakes that people make that they have no clue that they're even making them?
Okay, so I see wedding vendors making so many mistakes on Pinterest, which is why I'm making it my mission to teach people how to use it properly, because when you use it properly, it's so powerful. But the 2 mistakes that I'm going to highlight for you. The first one is being too generic. So that's coming back to the keyword kind of stuff we've talked about. But what I do, I go to like a vendor's Pinterest page, and so often I will see a board which is called something like my portfolio, our work, or just the name of their business. And then they've pinned all their incredible pictures to that board. Now, the problem with that, because of keywords, is that like no bride is going to Pinterest and searching for my portfolio to find the pictures of your wedding stationery or your cakes or whatever it is. So you need to be like really niche in the titles that you give, especially on your boards. So you need to think about like things that do well on Pinterest. So colors, themes of weddings, locations of weddings, venues, create boards around those things, and then add your products and services to them. The other mistake, kind of in a similar field that I see vendors making all the time, is that they do this. So they create one board, and say they do wedding hair, okay? They create a board and they put all of their beautiful pictures of their wedding hair. And then they think, you know, my brides are also interested in cakes. So they start a wedding cake board for the cakes, and then they start a stationery board for the stationery. Now, this is a huge, huge mistake, because most people don't come to your profile on Pinterest, okay? Most people will find the individual boards or individual pins. So if you've created a board all around stationery, but you're a hairstylist, like you can't pin pictures of hairstyles to a stationery board, okay? So if that is you and you've got that strategy, we need to change that right now. And so the way you need to do that is you need to step back and go back and think, okay, I need to have my work on every single board that I have. So how can I do that? So instead of having a stationery board and a hair board, have like a rose gold luxe wedding inspiration board, and have pictures of cakes and flowers in that kind of theming, and then have the pictures of your hairstyles or whatever it is that match that theme. Because if a bride is planning that kind of wedding, that's what they're going to be searching for in the top of Pinterest, and you're going to serve them loads of amazing ideas, and your pictures are going to be everywhere. So on every single board, make sure all of your boards have your pictures. And if they don't, then you need to rename your boards so that they do. Otherwise, all you're doing is marketing other people and not yourself.
I love it. And so one of the things too, so I know like whether it's your website or regular SEO strategies, like when you rename things too many times, it can count against you or it can take a while to work. On Pinterest, is it that way, or is it like, no, you rename it and it starts to work better for you?
Yeah, so I wouldn't go renaming stuff all the time, but if stuff's not really working for you, or you know you've made a mistake in the way you've set it up, then it's not going to hurt you to rename it. What is going to hurt you, and it's really important you don't do, is deleting things. Okay, Pinterest hates it if you mass delete. So if you watch this and then think, I've done Pinterest all wrong, and you go to your account, delete everything, like Pinterest is going to hate you, because the way that Pinterest works is if you pin a picture. So if I have a picture of this pen, and I'm like, I sell pens, here's a picture of the pen, okay? And then someone else repins it, and then they repin it, and then the picture of the pen is everywhere. If I go, I don't like the picture of the pen, and delete it, it deletes it from everywhere. And Pinterest says, but Megan, like that was on her dream pen board, and now you've deleted the picture of the pen that she loves so much, and we don't like you anymore. So you not delete, okay? And if, like, obviously deleting one or two things here and there isn't going to be a problem. But if you go in and start wiping loads and loads of your stuff, it's going to be a total nightmare. So don't do it.
That's funny. And what about changing you can like change it so that it's private so that people can't see it? Is that the same as like deleting? So like if it's something that you're like, okay, I totally screwed that up, I shouldn't have been posting that, but I don't want to mass delete it, can you set it to private, or is that the same thing as deleting basically?
No, that's absolutely fine. So if you do have this problem and you want to delete, there's two things you can do. Either, like you said, make the board secret, or create one board which you call like archive or old, make it secret, and move all the pins to that board so they're not visible on your profile anymore, but you're not creating holes. If it's whole boards that you don't like, you can archive the board. So just go into the edit button on the board, hit archive board, and it will disappear, but it's not the same as deleting. So just don't delete everything, do one of those two things. And if anyone goes to do that and gets stuck, please reach out to me, message me before you hit delete, and I'll help you sort it out.
I love it. That's so funny. But again, it's one of those things you're like, oh, I screwed up, let me just delete it and I'll start over. It'll hurt you. So I think that's really good. And now when you archive it, anyone who's pinned it, they can still access that pin, right?
Yeah, so damaging it for anyone else. It's just hiding it and stopping it being sent out from you. The other thing is people say, oh, I want to delete stuff because my work is better now. And I get that, but it's kind of not the same as Instagram. So on Instagram, we want it to look perfect. We want it to look like our best work now. Whereas on Pinterest, if it's not your best work anymore, like maybe hide it in a secret board on your profile. But if other people have pinned it to their dream wedding board, it's because they like your work. So even if it's not your best work, they love it. Like people are only pinning stuff that they love. So even though it's not your best work, like don't feel like you got to hide it everywhere from Pinterest, because actually if those people like it, well, let them like it and let them pay you to make it.
That's a good strategy. If someone likes it and they're willing to pay you, let them do it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Hey, now, so yeah, I think it's one of those things like Pinterest, like it's definitely something that, you know, when you need to essentially get yourself in front of, you know, couples that are planning their weddings, it's a great spot because that's exactly where they're going. And so how many boards should you have and how many pins in each board do you think is like the best strategy? Like the more boards, the better. And then like 20 pins, 30, 40 pins each board? Or is it better to have like a smaller number of boards and a lot of pins in each board?
So for me, it depends on the amount of content that you've got and the amount of images you've got readily available to pin. But on the whole, it doesn't matter if you have lots of boards, and it doesn't matter if you have lots of pins on those boards, because remember, most people aren't coming to your profile ever. So they're just finding those individual pins or those individual boards. So they will never know that you've got 900 other boards. You know, it doesn't matter. But if you are going to have lots of boards, they need to be good. You need to make sure your images are on all of them. So don't just like bang out loads of boards just for the sake of it. Make sure they're good boards, but don't feel like there's a set number. The only thing I would say is if you're starting a new board, make sure you start it off with like 6 to 8 pins, like to get going with, so you don't have holes. Like I don't like seeing boards where it's just got 2 images and then like 6 gray squares where they haven't filled it. So make sure when you're starting a new board, you've got enough stuff to fill it. But, you know, like I'll start new boards when I've been involved in a styled shoot or I featured a styled shoot on the blog, because that's kind of given me a whole load of new inspiration, which is going to fill out a board. So if you're involved in a styled shoot, you should be creating boards around those so that you can share your images. The other thing to remember we haven't mentioned is you can pin the same picture to multiple boards. So you don't just pin the same picture once. Like if I have a picture and it's like a gorgeous picture from a styled shoot on my blog, I may post that to 6 to 8 different boards that are all relevant to that picture. So you can make your content go further. Don't think you've only got to post it once, but just don't do it all in a row. So if you're going to post the same picture to 6 boards, post it like a week apart. Don't post it 6 times in a go and spam the heck out of Pinterest, because they won't like that.
Love it. And what about schedulers? So like, you know, Tailwind, or I think I think you can do it on Buffer as well. Like, do you suggest to use a scheduler for Pinterest, like to make sure that the timing is the best timing and the day is best for when you're pinning things?
Yeah, so for me, I use a scheduler. I use Tailwind. I would suggest that if you're going to use a scheduler, that you start off trying to do it manually just for a while, if you're just new to Pinterest, just to understand how the platform works and how you're going to do it. Then once you've understood it, you've learned how to use it properly, then invest in a scheduler. And the dreamy thing about having a scheduler, which for me is ideal, because I don't know about you, but we're all short of time. Like we don't have time to pin to Pinterest every single day. And so if you have a scheduler, what I do on Tailwind is I maybe spend 30 minutes to an hour once a month, and I will schedule out the whole month of Pinterest in that time. And it pins for me 7 times every single day without me even going on Pinterest. So like if you are short of time, once you understand the platform, a scheduler for me is worth it. Tailwind, I think, is something like $15 a month. And for me, it's worth the $15 a month because my time that I was spending doing it manually is like way more valuable than the $15 that's going to make it super speedy. So yeah, Tailwind for me is the best Pinterest scheduler. You can schedule directly on Pinterest now, like they've added that feature, but it's really limited. So you can only pin 30 pins in advance or something like that. So if you want to do like 7 a day, that's not gonna get you very far. So, but you can play around using the scheduler on Pinterest itself, but Tailwind is kind of my go-to now. Like there's so many great features. We could do a whole hour just talking about Tailwind.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. And so in terms of kind of like what type of traffic people can expect to see from Pinterest, what would you say? Like, do you think that like businesses could get 50% of their business from Pinterest, more? How do you feel like in terms of like the number of, eyeballs or the traffic like that can actually come from Pinterest, especially when it's like they're, you're competing against so many others who are on Pinterest, you know,
But
how does what's
so
that?
many people don't know how to do Pinterest well. So if you do all the stuff that I've told you about today, you can go like your Pinterest will grow quicker than so many other people because most people use Pinterest badly, like seriously. So you can get like a good number of eyeballs on your stuff on Pinterest. Like the numbers on Pinterest blow my mind because if I said to you that you were going to get 10,000 views on a Facebook post, you would probably like fall off your chair because it's hard to get 10,000 views on a Facebook post. But on Pinterest monthly, like 10,000 views isn't a big number. Like you should be looking at 50 to 100,000 plus views if you're doing it well. I had one photographer who I worked with on her Pinterest, and she's pushing 500,000 views now on her images on Pinterest every single month. Now, so the amount of eyeballs you can get on your business is phenomenal. Obviously, the numbers come down when we're starting to look at the amount of clicks. But again, it depends what you're doing. If you're putting out really good content, if you're putting out really good blog posts, if you're being specific about the problems that you're answering, you can get a lot of traffic over to your website. A couple of 100, 300, 400, 500 hits every single month. And what I love about Pinterest and getting that traffic is it's very evergreen. So if I write a blog post, for example, and I talk about it on Instagram or I pin it on Facebook, I probably have like 12 to a maximum of 24 hours for people to click on it before it's way down the newsfeed and no one cares anymore unless I post it again. On Pinterest, the magical thing is like I could pin it today, and in 2 years' time, people will still be clicking on it and coming to read it on my website because it's still out there and people are finding it in the search. So my best performing blog post on my website, I wrote in January 2018, and it still gets a couple of hundred hits every single month from Pinterest because it's out there and people are finding it in the search. So like it's hard to give definite numbers, but the people are there. There are big numbers to be found, and you can definitely get the clicks if you're putting the work in, doing the niche specific content, and making sure you're giving people a reason to click to your site.
I love it. And I know like on Instagram and Facebook, you can only have a certain percentage that's words versus images. Is it the same for Pinterest?
No, Pinterest really likes those graphics with the words on. Like if you go to the Pinterest homepage, you'll see the stuff that's coming up on the front is often like big pictures with words over the top of them. The thing we haven't talked about actually, which is really, really important, especially when we're talking about getting clicks, is make sure you do have your website address linked to every single pin, because you'll be surprised the amount of people that I see that have just uploaded pictures like you would on Instagram on their profile, and they haven't attached a URL. So they haven't attached a website link to that picture. Now, what happens if we go back to the pen? So if I post up this picture of the pen on my profile, as soon as you, Megan, if you repost it, it loses its link back to me. It now looks like it's your pen. However, when I post the pen, if I attach to it a URL to the pen website, when you repost it, the URL goes with it all around Pinterest. So it's really, really, really important that every single pin that you create has a URL that matches it. And not only should the URL be with it, but it should be relevant. So if you're talking about converting customers from Pinterest, don't just stick your homepage on every single pin. Like no one just wants to come and visit your homepage. If they see a beautiful pair of shoes or a beautiful image or a beautiful cake, they want to go and find out how they can buy that or how they can see more like that. So don't just send them to your homepage where they've got to search through pages and pages to find it again, because they're just going to leave. Okay, make sure you're posting a link and make sure it's a relevant link where they can find out more about whatever it is in the picture.
I love it. And that's really important because you can get them looking at your pin, but if they have no way to actually contact you or find out more, the link, it's like it's not worth it. Like for all of the
time.
Totally. That's so good. And so now people can find you. They can go to, it's at BECCAPOUNTNEY. I'm
Yeah,
like,
at
I
Becca Power
remember.
on Instagram. Yeah, find me at Becca Pountney on Instagram, or at Engage Weddings if you want to take a look at our blog. But yeah, like if you have questions, if you're watching this on replay, if you want to understand Pinterest better, reach out because I would love to help you. Because like I said at the beginning, it's my mission to make the wedding industry better at Pinterest. Like all brides, almost all brides and grooms, I believe, are on Pinterest. If you talk to anyone planning their wedding, so many of them are planning it on Pinterest. And as vendors, we're just way behind. Like, why are we not there, and why are we not part of that conversation? So if nothing else, like, go on Pinterest tonight, go look at what people are doing, and if you get stuck, reach out to me. I'd love to help you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So many good little tidbits of information. And I think I think hopefully people can kind of feel like they have a better grasp. Because I think that's a big part of it too, is like, if you don't understand how it works, or you don't understand what your strategy should be, it can be overwhelming and kind of daunting to even have to think about what you're going to be doing with that. But now hopefully they know a little bit more. And if they get stuck, they can always DM you, reach out, and then, you know, all those eyeballs, all those requests, inquiries will be coming in.
Definitely. And Megan, let's hope that we're going to see you more active on Pinterest soon.
I promise. I promise. I'm like, yeah, okay. So I promise. Cross my heart. I'm gonna work on it. So you guys can hold me to it. You guys don't. Yeah. If you don't see us active on Pinterest, then you guys can all DM me and be like, Megan, you were supposed to be on Pinterest. I love it. Perfect. Awesome. Well, have a great night. Thanks so much for joining. Everyone, again, if you guys have questions on Pinterest, go ahead and reach out to Becca. In the caption, we'll have her accounts as well, so you can just click on those. But thanks so much. I love this. And I will. I'm going to be doing Pinterest for sure.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you everyone that joined us. Hopefully I'll see you all on Pinterest very soon. Have a good night.